Hey guys, and welcome back to the ASX Investor channel. Welcome back to another ASX interview. Today, we are very excited to be revisiting the Race Oncology story. ASX RAC are an exciting company playing in the precision oncology space. They've got an incredible drug, Bisantrene, which has over the past year had a very transformative period. There's been a lot of news and announcements coming to light. And with that, there's been significant developments on the clinical trial process as well, a lot of which we'll be unpacking today. We're grateful to be rejoined once again on the channel by Dr. Daniel Tillett, the Chief Scientific Officer and an Executive Director. It's an exciting story. Looking forward to discussing it all. Daniel, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. It's good to be back.
It has been a very busy period for you and the Race team. But before we dive into everything that's been going on, just as a refresher, did you want to speak about who Race Oncology is and what is the opportunity that you're trying to solve with Bisantrene?
So yeah, Race Oncology is a precision oncology company. So we're developing a particular drug for cancer that is targeting a wide range of different cancers. It's an unusual drug in that it's been developed a large amount in the past. There's a lot of clinical data, but it was in a different use today than it was in the past. In the past, it was a anthracycline, typical sort of chemotherapeutic drug, and today it's targeting a particularly important protein called FTO, and it's part of this complex pathway involved in regulating RNA, and that goes on to have a very important role in the development and spread of cancers, many different cancers.
Of course, coming out of that City of Hope article last year, there was a significant transfer in the strategy now to the three-pillar strategy with FTO leading as that key first pillar. Did you want to talk about the three different pillars and what they mean for the offering?
Yeah, so the first pillar is FTO. So within the FTO, we now have 22 different cancers that we know are driven by FTO. So that doesn't mean every single cancer of that type, but there's 22 different types that have been discovered to be driven by this particular cancer across all the majors: lung, breast, brain, pancreatic, leukemias. The list is sort of goes on and on and on. And so we happen to have a particular drug that targets that at very high specificity, and that we know a great deal about already. It's been in a lot of clinical development in the past. So that's pillar one. Very exciting opportunities, very cutting edge. Something that's only been discovered in the last few years, and every week that goes by, there's new exciting opportunities coming along. Second pillar is in breast cancer. The drug Bisantrene had been used in a large phase 3 breast cancer trial back in the 1980s. Unfortunately, for just bad luck, basically, is the simplest answer, it didn't manage to succeed in that trial, but it gave very interesting results, and we think that using a modern, we can actually target back in breast cancer again. It's much more safer to the heart than many of the other chemotherapeutic drugs that are out there. And the final one is in acute myeloid leukemia, which is a blood cancer, very nasty blood cancer. If you don't get treated and you have AML, it's from diagnosis to death, it's 10 weeks. So it's really, really quick. Unfortunately, it's a really hard cancer still to treat. And Bisantrene performed really well in the past. And in fact, it got all the way through to approval in France in 1990. So but it was taken off the market. So there's a lot of opportunities there across those three pillars. And they're designed to capture some of the exciting upside. Blue sky in pillar one, sort of a large market in pillar two, but with a fair amount of clinical data to support it, and a really vast pillar, which is a very low probability of failure in pillar three because it's already been approved previously for that indication. So it's already been once through the thing. We just have to bring it up to modern standards.
It's a robust offering, and maybe starting with that AML pillar, there's two trials now starting, the extramedullary in Australia and the Israel is back out. Did you want to speak about how they're going?
Yeah, whilst Bisantrene had been used in a lot of AML trials in the 1980s and 1990s, it hadn't been used for a long time. It had been off the market and it had just been forgotten. And a lot of advances have been made in AML in that time and in cancer in general. And so we ran a pilot study, small phase 2 trial last year, and that provided in Israel, and that provided us with and an overall response rate's very similar to the historical, around 40%, which was really exciting. So what we've done is we've gone back to the same investigator and we're running a larger trial, 29 patients, and instead of using the drug on its own, which was the standard that cancer drugs used to be used in the 1980s and 90s, we're using it in combination with two other drugs we've discovered in the lab work really well to target AML. And so we're running a combination trial in Israel right now. So that trial has been signed off on. The CROs are all appointed, and first patient is due to be treated very shortly. So we'll hopefully have news to update the market about that. And that's an exciting opportunity there that we're hoping to see really good results from that trial. Closer to home, we have a trial AML, which is where the leukemia escapes from the bone marrow, which is normally where you get leukemias, and it takes up residence somewhere outside the body. It can be anywhere in the body, actually. And when that happens, it's very difficult to treat. Instead of behaving like a leukemia, it behaves more like a solid tumor from that particular tissue. And so the drugs that work well on leukemia tend not to work well on solid tumors. But we were very lucky, and we did a trial that 100% of the patients that were in that trial that had extramedullary responded very well to Bisantrene. And so that's the reason why we're doing a trial here in Australia. And this is exciting for two reasons. It's an unmet clinical need. So no one is doing clinical trials for extramedullary patients. And it's about 20% of all AML patients. And the second is it's a two-part trial. So we call them stratums. But you can really think of them as two independent trials that are running in parallel. And the first trial is running in patients that can stand the rigor of high-intensity chemotherapy with the intention to get them to a bone marrow transplant and a cure. And if you can get a patient to that, then there's a good chance they can actually be cured of the disease. And so that's in patients, what are called healthy patients. Or in patients, unfortunately, AML is a disease of old age, in particular, and so most of the patients are quite old and they're frail and they can't handle that level of chemotherapy. However, we know from the work that had been done out of the City of Hope and other groups that FTO is very important for AML, and so we're doing an FTO low dose of Bisantrene in combination with another drug called decitabine that targets AML, and so that gives us an FTO parallel trial and allows us to treat both healthy patients or relatively healthy patients and patients who are more frail. And it's an exciting one. We're both tackling both FTO and the sort of chemotherapeutic approach at the same time. And this gives us not only a huge amount of great data here in Australia, but it also gives us a pathway to approval for the drug and a very cost-effective and rapid pathway to approval. So this is what makes it such an exciting trial. Not only will we get impact on FTO, but we'll also get as a target, but we'll also get data on how to take this through to approval in the US and FDA and EMA approval. So yeah, that's the clinical trials is going well and very exciting, but they take up a lot of time. I can't begin to tell you how much effort goes into designing and putting together a clinical trial. It's massive.
One of the really exciting things about the Race story is that all of these trials are going to be open label. So the data readouts will continue to flow through. So there's always a lot of news flow and announcements. We'd love to hear with the FTO preclinical work, obviously there's a lot going on. It's such a hot new area that it's continuing to develop. Yeah. How's that progressing at the moment?
Going very well. So we have 3 preclinical programs all going on at the University of Newcastle. One looking at, or actually 4, actually, if I take into account, because there's 3 investigators, but there's 4 projects. So first project is in clear cell renal cell carcinoma, which we know from other work, FTO is critically important for that cancer. We have the ability to target pretty much all clear cell renal cell carcinomas, and these are a subtype of kidney cancer that's very difficult to treat. And we think that Bisantrene offers a lot of potential at low doses, very non-toxic type approach. So we're currently undertaking cell and animal work in that area to show that Bisantrene works how we think it does from the other scientific literature. The other program we have is we have a mouse model for extramedullary AML, and we're doing work in that. And that allows us to do a lot of exploratory stuff that we can't really do in the clinic and work out a lot of mechanistic how this is actually working. And that's something that's very difficult to do in patients generally don't like you to cut them open and take samples out, whatever. Where mice, on the other hand, well, they might complain, but you can do things, you can answer questions that you can't otherwise do. And that gives us a lot of information going forward when we talk to the FDA or any of the other regulatory agencies and be able to explain how the drug's working. The other two trials, we have one in melanoma and in combination with checkpoint inhibitors. So one of the most exciting discoveries about FTO is it allows, one of the big problems, I guess, with cancer is the checkpoint inhibitors like Keytruda, immune checkpoint inhibitors, is that many of the cancers are resistant to those, and trying to get cancers to respond to those drugs is difficult. And it's been discovered that FTO is one of the mechanisms that underlies the resistance. And so we're doing work to show that Bisantrene will overcome that resistance in a mouse model of melanoma. And melanoma is a good cancer to work in with mice because the mouse model of melanoma is very similar to human, which is not the same for a lot of mouse cancers, just don't match the human cancer very closely. But for melanoma, it's quite a good model. And the final one is we have a cardio toxic focused mechanism of action preclinical program working out why Bisantrene doesn't have this toxicity towards the heart. This is a very exciting one as well because it's really not been known. It's been known empirically that it doesn't cause damage to the heart, but we don't know why. All the other drugs in the class that Bisantrene belongs to cause damage to the heart, but for some reason Bisantrene doesn't. And so nowadays, in the 1980s, they weren't able to do that work because they just didn't have the technological tools and knowledge. And today you can go in and do a lot of experiments and work out exactly how that occurs. And this is all very important for when you talk to a regulatory agency about explaining, how does your drug work and why does it work? You can say to the FDA, oh, well, it just works. And they'll go, well, how does it work? Yeah. And you go, oh, we don't know. And that's not a great answer to say. You can get drugs approved, we just don't know how, but it's much, much easier for you if you know how it works. So, yeah, that's the preclinical side. A lot is going on there, and there'll be a lot of news flow coming out of that over the remainder of this year and into early next year. So it's a lot. We'll have interim updates, final reports, and so forth. And this hopefully will drive, this is research. They may not all work, but it doesn't matter. Only if one works, one gives great results, and that's fantastic.
The expression of FTOs seems to be in most of the major cancer types. To help to conceptualize it for the audience, are you able to speak about the scale, if successful, of this, and also the opportunity maybe of some comparable types of impact of other types of treatments out there?
Yeah, it's a totally unique way. So we're actually the leaders in this space. So it's called RNA epigenetics. So it's similar. People have heard about epigenetics, which is controlling which genes get turned on and off. And it's a sort of a regulatory pathway that exists within cells. And when that goes wrong, the cells go from being a normal cell to being a cancerous cell, and sometimes a very aggressive cancerous cell as well. And so FTO is a key part of this pathway. And there are about a half a dozen companies out there in the world that are working in this area. It's only been sort of discovered since 2017, and there's a huge amount of stuff that's going on. And we just happen to be the world leaders in this particular area. So it's just by chance, of course. We didn't set out to be. Other people discovered that Bisantrene actually targeted this pathway. They were looking for drugs that targeted it. It just turned out that Bisantrene was the best one for that particular thing. So the great advantage of this is for many new cancer drugs, particularly the precision-targeted cancer drugs, which have much less toxicity and are much better for the patient, they're usually limited to a very small range of cancers, maybe a subtype of breast cancer or a subtype of lung cancer, and they only work in that particular thing. This one's very unusual in that it works across a very wide range of cancers. So as I mentioned, we know 22, and that's pretty much because that's all people have looked at so far because it's so new. So literally every week there's a new paper coming out describing a new cancer where FTO is important. So this means that you've got something there that's a massive opportunity across a wide range of cancers. And the last drug class that came along like that was probably the immune checkpoint inhibitors. So you take something like Keytruda, that's a $25 billion a year sales drug. And the reason why it's so large is it works across a wide range of different cancers. And it's one of a family. There's 7 now that are approved, and it's about all up, I think it's around $70 billion US. So when you have an opportunity that's wide across a wide range of different cancers, you've got a massive opportunity there ahead of you. So it's our job to deliver on that opportunity. So it's actually kind of overwhelming because you have so many opportunities of areas you could do, and you want to do them all. But as we're only, I wouldn't say a tiny company, but we're a mid-sized company now, and we can only do so many things at a time. So, maybe if we're a huge pharmaceutical company like a Pfizer or a Johnson & Johnson, you could do them all, or a Merck or something like this. But if you're a smaller company, you have to focus. And so we've had to really focus in on the opportunities we think are the most likely to succeed and be the quickest to give a result.
Focus for a company like RAC, as you've mentioned, is to get as much runs on the board, get that data coming through. And I've heard you've mentioned that Big Pharma potentially start marketing out into 2022. Did you want to talk about the process for that and how it's looking?
Generally, the sweet spot when you want to... So we're a small company. You don't want to develop a drug all the way through and set up a whole marketing thing and the rest of it. It's just not viable for a company from Australia. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The big pharmaceutical companies are great at selling. They've got all that infrastructure in place for selling. What they're not really good at is at innovating. They're huge bureaucracies, and just coming up with new ideas is not what they're good at. Also, what the model is within the industry is they look around and they try and acquire very promising assets at the sort of phase 2 level as the sort of sweet spot. And you tend to get the price is about the optimal there for that. You actually don't get a huge amount more by spending all this money, taking it all the way through to development. But the advantage of that is as we have good high quality phase 2 data, which is our intention around FTO, then we have something that we can take to partners or acquirers and say, look at this, look at the opportunity. You can see how big this is. Imagine if you guys got on this and ran all the different trials and all the different cancers, how big this thing could be. And that's exactly what Merck did with Keytruda. They were about to throw it away and drop it. And then they saw BMS got some exciting results for their PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor, and they decided, okay, let's go. And then they've run, I think, 800 trials since then and just spent across all the different cancers, every single cancer they can think of, and see how it performs. And that's what the power of a large pharmaceutical company can do and take it forward into all the different indications. So it's our job to show that it works, show that it actually works properly at a phase 2 level where you get an idea of how it's going to perform, and then get out there and market it to someone who can take it the rest of the way. And that's our intention.
There's obviously going to be a lot of data and announcements coming through over this next period on the clinical front. Would love to just hear, of course, there still is that long runway ahead, but that focus on commercialization, how will it look and what should investors be looking for over the next 12 to 18 months?
You should be looking towards the data, because this is what drives commercial deals, is the quality of the data. It's not, how fantastic you are or how exciting the company might look or the website. The large pharmaceutical companies are interested in clinical data. Does your drug work? Can they make it? Can they sell it? Are the side effects reasonable? And in cancer, you can have pretty bad side effects. If you look at the CAR Ts, they kill about 10% of the patients they get used to treat with. So you can put up with a lot of side effects in cancer. And you get out there and you say, okay, this is a great drug. It's got all these opportunities. And then you market that out to. And the nice thing is that Bisantrene can fit into a whole bunch of different areas for different players out there. And in an ideal world, you end up in a bidding war, but sometimes things like that don't turn out. But if you try and put it together in the right way, the right package, then you've got something that's really compelling and will generate maximum interest from the large players who can afford to pay the price for the drug. And so it can go in a couple of different ways. The more traditional way is you tend to have a partnership, and that might have milestones and so forth. And then that often turns into an acquisition down the path. So it's often kind of a way of the large pharmaceutical company wants to get to know the company, wants to get to know the drug, wants to see how it performs before putting in the big dollars. Or sometimes it's just a straight out acquisition. And it just depends on how interested the particular acquirer is in a particular asset at the time. So any of those outcomes would be a fantastic outcome. A partnership with a large pharmaceutical company to develop various clinical programs and pay for them all would be a fantastic outcome for the Race shareholders, or an acquisition, provided it's at the right price, of course, is a fantastic outcome for the shareholders as well. So both, as a board, we're really focused, management, we're really focused on getting a commercial return from that. We're all large shareholders. I hold just under 10% of the company. So I want to see a return on my investment. So it's not a management, slush fund to keep me employed. It's turning it around and making sure that we get a return for shareholders.
And speaking about the shareholders there as well, Race recently had a capital raise that was friendly towards those retail shareholders, providing that option to shareholders. Would love to hear about the logic behind that, and also what that means moving forward now, meaning they will be well capitalized as well if those options do get exercised and come through.
Exactly. So often capital raises, I'm sure are often not so friendly to the retail investors or the existing shareholders. So we are really focused on looking after the shareholders. So we did a capital raise, basically at zero, I think 1% or 2% discount to the close. So we managed to hold the price. And instead of doing things like a rights issue or an SPP, which are very often very destructive to the share price, because an SPP, for example, everyone says, I'm going to sell my shares to go and buy into the SPP. And then the share price falls down to the SPP. So we're able to do it at no discount, really at $3. And instead of doing that, we rewarded our loyal shareholders with a option, loyalty option, which allows to buy a share at $4.50 between now and the 16th of May, so basically 12 months. And that had on a basis of 1 for 20. So every 20 shares you had, you got one of these free bonus shares. And this is a way of protecting and looking after the existing shareholders. That had a Black Scholes valuation of around $1.20, I think, from memory. But it also provides a really cost-effective way of raising capital when we actually need it. So, we could go out and raise a huge amount of money and just sit it in the bank and it'll earn no interest and doesn't do anything. It's very expensive capital from our shareholders. Or we can say, we'll do just-in-time capital. We know we're going to need money next year. We'll have, if these shares, if the share price is above $4.50 anytime between now and May next year, we'll have about $32 million coming in capital, and it will come in when we need it, and it will be rewarding the existing shareholders. No dilution. Everyone's got the right to participate in it. It's a great model, and it's something that's rarely used, I have to say. And the result of it was an immediate. Usually, when you do a capital raise, the share price falls because it's done at a discount, and people who've got the new shares can sell for an immediate bonus. They take the money and run. We straight away went up, and we've not gone anywhere near the raise price since then. So it was really, if a raise done right can actually be a real positive to the share price. So yeah, this reflects our philosophy of only raising capital when we need it, trusting our shareholders they'll support us if we do the right thing and deliver on what we say we'll do. And we don't need a big war chest to get on with all the various activities we've got.
Building on that focus towards the shareholders as well, I've heard that Race's focus really is on having that good communication to shareholders. You're personally active on the Hot Copper, which has been a wealth of information and knowledge. We'd love to just know about the strategy behind that, why it's so important, and why to you personally you think it's important to continue that communication line.
Two things. It's there's been a lot of advances in means of communication today than there were, say, 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, the only way of really communicating with shareholders was AGMs letters you might send out, maybe an email that was really cutting edge. These days, you've got so many different tools to be able to communicate with your shareholders, have them engaged. And the shareholders really are, from my perspective, they're partners in this. It's their business. I'm a major shareholder, but I'm not. There's 90% of the other shareholders out there. It's their business as well, and they deserve to know what we're doing with their money and what's going on. And they deserve to have things explained. Biotech's a complicated area to understand. It's not, flipping burgers and putting it on, buns. It's really complicated. It's got lots of different moving parts, and many people aren't, you're not expecting the average investor to understand all of that. And it's our job as management to make sure that our investors understand what's going on. So, I think it's, a really important part of communicating with the shareholders. And the shareholders really appreciate that. When you shareholder contacts me, I get back to them. If a shareholder asks a question, I'll answer their question, within not price sensitive questions, but reasonable questions. I'll try and answer them. And that it creates a kind of an atmosphere where shareholders trust the management, and trust in management is a critical part of the valuation of a company. If people think that you're doing the right thing by them, they're willing to support you, and it goes around, and then more people come in, they tell their friends about it, and they say this is a company that's different and does the right thing. And ultimately, whilst it's great to invest in a biotech that might do something about cancer, you invest to get a return. We have to be focused commercially on getting a return for our shareholders, not just running a whole series of science experiments.
ASX RAC have got a very passionate and loyal share register. Would love to hear for those longer term shareholders who have been on the journey for a long time, maybe those prospective shareholders who might be looking into ASX RAC. Did you have any reflections or messages you wanted to share with them?
Just to thank them all for their support. It's been quite an amazing journey. I've only been with Race for less than 2 years, actually, since I joined. I think I joined in September of 2019. And it's just been such an amazing journey. We've gone from 4.5 cents to, as high as $4 in that sort of time frame. And it's just been an evolution of a story that started out with promise and has just built and built and built. And we've had a lot of luck along the way, but we've taken advantage of that luck. And, it really is an exciting opportunity. So it's something that, a lot of companies, I'm a large investor in a lot of other companies as well. And, you invest in a mining company and it's hard to get super excited about a hole in the ground. But with something like a biotech, you really can get passionate about it because you really know that you're making a difference to people's lives. You might actually be the difference between someone living and dying. And that really keeps you motivated and keeps many of our shareholders motivated on the whole story and making sure that we're going forward. I do a lot of work and try and get a lot done because it's a great opportunity, and I really love it.
It's a compelling opportunity. We'd love to hear your final reflections when we're looking out 12 months ahead into the future. Where is Race Oncology going to be, and what should investors be watching for on the story up ahead?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. Just we tell you what we're going to be doing, and then we go ahead and do it. And if we're lucky, it'll all turn out to be good. We can't guarantee the results, obviously. And whenever you go into the clinic or into the lab, things happen. But we're passionate about doing what we say we'll do and delivering on that. And so there's a lot of news flow to come ahead over the next 12 months. So it's not one of these things where sometimes you'll see companies and they'll do a clinical trial and you have to wait around 2 years or 3 years for the results. And then it's all in one big excitement. Did it make the end point or not? Usually not, but that's often the way it goes. But hopefully we think with Bisantrene, we've got an opportunity here. We've managed to de-risk it enough that there's a good chance that at least one of the pathways will work. And if that's all it needs. You don't have to succeed at everything. We just succeed at one, or everyone will do very well out of it. So we've got a lot of opportunities, a lot of shots on goal, as the cliche goes.
It's such a fascinating story. We'll definitely be continuing to watch where ASX RAC heads from here. Dr. Daniel Tillett, it's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure catching up with Dr. Tillett and discussing the Race Oncology story. We'd love to know your thoughts, so drop in a comment below what you think about Race Oncology and where do you think ASX RAC head from here moving forward. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Feel free to share it out. This past period, we've interviewed a range of different ASX CEOs on the channel, so we'll leave links to those up above that you can check out after this one. We're the ASX Investor channel and we make daily videos talking about the stock market, investing, and we find and analyze the best growth stocks. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you've got your bell notifications turned on as well, so you won't miss a daily episode, and we'd love to have you join the community. Race Oncology is a fascinating company. We've got a range of different exciting announcements and potential catalysts up ahead. We'll continue to watch where the ASX RAC story heads from here. Thank you so much for joining us. For now, stay well and happy investing.